Welcome back to the Bible Lounge. We're taking a quick look now at general revelation once again. So we want to address two questions. In the last video, we looked at what general revelation is, the knowledge that God does reveal through nature. And in this one, we want to consider these two questions. What do we learn from God in general revelation? And what don't we learn from God in general revelation? I left off a question mark there. So jumping into Psalm 19 again. The heavens declare the glory of God. So what are the heavens declaring? What is nature and the heavens and the sky above telling us? Well, it's telling us about the glory of God, and it's proclaiming his handiwork. So we learn something about this idea of glory. What is glory? The glory of God, the sky above proclaiming his handiwork. So his handiwork is to do with God as creator. So we learn something from nature about God being creator, that he made all things, with this amazing creative diversity and variety, and that in fact is part of his glory. So the glory of God is to create just by speaking. None of us can create just by speaking. Even if we have some computer-controlled machine, 3D printer, maybe that we can talk to and make stuff, printer, please make an iPhone 10 case or whatever they do, and the printer might be able to do that. It still requires a printer, it still requires the materials, and it still requires the design to go ahead and do that. Whereas if God spoke to create all things, he did it without all of that stuff. He created from nothing. So there's probably a natural cause and effect chain that you could follow backwards to arrive at a little bit philosophical, bit of philosophy maybe. But you can think through some of these details about the nature of God from what he has created. You do learn something about God from what he has created. But getting into this idea of the glory of God further, we can see in Romans chapter 1 here. Let me read this to you. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. What truth? For what can be known about God, this is the truth, what can be known about God is the truth, is plain to them. They are suppressing this truth about what can be known about God. And it's plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, God's invisible attributes have been shown to them. What are his invisible attributes? His eternal power and divine nature. So we can learn something about eternity, something about power that comes from eternity, and something about God's divinity from the things that have been made. So we'll keep reading. So his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived in contrast to the suppression of the truth. What can be known about God is plain to them. It's clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So you just have to look around at the things that have been made, people, trees, animals, fish, birds, and you can see in those things God's eternal power and divine nature. And then it carries on and says, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. So this is where idolatry comes in, and these things that are created, mortal man, birds and animals, are exchanged for God, for the immortal, eternal God. So that's something that we can know about God from his creation. So what do we learn from God in general revelation? We learn that God made everything. The heavens declare his handiwork. We know that he has this eternal power and that he is divine. We learn these things, that God is immortal, eternal, from creation. And again, it's sort of philosophy. It's thinking through where did everything come from? cause and effect all the way back, must have been an uncaused cause who was God. And he's a personal God because he creates personal beings, men and women. Okay, so those are the things we learn. We also learn one more thing, which is our segue into the things that we don't learn. So learning one more thing here, looking in Romans 2, further on in Romans. What a wonderful book Romans is, some amazing truths in there. Reading verses 14 and 15 of chapter 2. For when Gentiles who do not have the law, that's the law of God, you might say the Ten Commandments, okay, 10c, the Ten Commandments. When Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. So it's saying they kind of have the law, and the law they themselves have is right. It's, verse 15 is the answer. How do they know that it is right? They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts. Okay, in the evidence of what has been made in people, there is God's law written on their hearts. And their conscience, we did talk about this in the last video, I think, but their conscience will bear witness. And their conscience and their conflicting thoughts, so the thoughts that conflict with their conscience, will either accuse them, so their conscience knows it's wrong, and they think to themselves, I did what is wrong, that's an accusation, or excuse them. I did what is right, my conscience knows it's right, so my thoughts are excusing me from any wrongdoing in this case. But here's the thing, we all know that we go against our conscience. And we all know that we have wronged God. We've sinned against him. Sin is the transgression of God's law. And if we know the law is written on our hearts, then everyone, no matter where they are in the world or when they existed or will exist, every single person has that law written on their hearts, which brings about the knowledge of sin. So we know enough from general revelation to know that we are sinful and that we have broken God's law. That's really serious. And we know enough to know that we deserve punishment for our sin. And this is where special revelation comes in. So in the next video, we'll be looking at what special revelation is and what special revelation teaches us. Special revelation, spoiler alert, teaches us one thing that general revelation does not. Special revelation teaches us about the gospel. The good news of our sin being removed from us and placed on Jesus, who died on the cross to take the punishment for our sin. So we learn about the gospel, the plan of redemption, otherwise known as salvation. We do not learn about salvation through general revelation. We only learn about salvation through special revelation. General revelation gives us enough to know that we deserve punishment, and then special revelation tells us how that punishment can be taken away. So hopefully that's helpful for you. If it is, please do all the usual like and subscribe things, and don't hesitate to get in touch if you have further questions or if you just want to say thanks. I hope it's been a blessing to you. God bless.